He's Chris Fowler, college game day host extraordinaire. And the ban is lifted. It's officially lifted. The ban is back together again, Chris. Good to have you back.
Thank you, Dan. Good to be back. Yeah, it's happy no longer to be under the yoke of a ban. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm ready to make an announcement or a confession in the wake of Melvin Gordon's announcement yesterday, which wasn't a surprise. But you got that out of him. So if you just asked the right question, I could make an announcement today.
If I ask you the right question, are you retired? Is this your last year doing game day?
Not ready to make that announcement yet.
But you're close.
No, I'm not close. No, it's always a year-by-year thing.
Are you going pro? Instead of college game day, you want to do pro game day?
Nobody's asked me to turn pro. I'm in college perpetually. It took me 5 years to get out of Boulder, and it's taken me 28 years to get out of ESPN college sports. So
okay, give me the topic.
No, I'm just joking.
Oh, no, you're not, Chris. There's something there. There's a little truth in every bit of kidding.
I don't want to sidetrack you.
Okay. Herb Street's job in jeopardy?
Definitely not.
Okay, good.
That I can tell you with conviction.
Okay. The craziest atmosphere that you've experienced, where you went in and you actually, maybe it took you a little off of your game, was where?
Well, before we had a net, we had a lot of crazy atmospheres where things flew at you from behind your back, and that took you off your game. I mean,
I can understand that.
There's a famous show at Michigan State, and they were playing Michigan. Saban was still with the Spartans. Big game. He did it in this empty field, and they do drink a little bit in East Lansing before a big game. It was very cold. And we had stuff. They had knocked down the little cheesy chain link fence that we had at the time surrounding the set back before we had these barriers and a DMZ and global security around us. This was very primitive. They were crowd surfing. They knocked the fence down. By the end of the show, when people picked Michigan over Michigan State, the East Lansing crowd was pelting us with everything from radishes, which I assume came out of a Bloody Mary, to footballs, to beer cans were pinwheeling over the set and exploding in front of us. And Herb Street almost got brained by a beer can. So then and the producer comes run out of the truck at the end of the show. Great show, fellas! What energy! Energy. We just almost got killed out there. I mean, yeah, there's energy because it's a survival feeling. So pretty soon after that, we got a net. And since then, I don't know if kids are better behaved or the size and seriousness of our security force. They're much better behaved now than they are. There's not much they can do to knock us off our game at this point, Dan.
What was the moment, though, that you realized that this was something bigger than what you could imagine?
Virginia Tech, late 90s, Michael Vick was there, and Frank Beamer decided to show the world through game day that Blacksburg was a great environment for football, and he encouraged the fans to go out. And we did the show inside Lane Stadium, which we don't really like doing them inside stadiums anymore, but at that point, they filled up like a good bit of one side of the stadium. And I don't know what it was, 23,000 or something. And then Kansas State wanted to break that record. Then Nebraska wanted to break that record. It got competitive in kind of a silly way, which really isn't the point of the show, to see how many people you can put in a stadium behind us. I don't like I said, I'd rather do it on a campus with some trees and something unique behind us rather than a big empty stadium. But that's when we sort of figured out, wow, this is really like a recruiting tool for these schools, and they're going to compete to have us go there and try to make the most out of it.
He's Chris Fowler, college game day host, also hosting the Heisman ceremony coming up this weekend. Got a favorite Heisman ceremony story that you tell?
Well, the least favorite's when the power went out. We one of the early years at the Heisman. They used to do it at the Down Athletic Club in the 13th floor. This little room with like an 8-foot ceiling and columns. There's a bar in the back, and all the old past winners used to go back there and have a few cocktails before and during the show. And it was very intimate. People who are old enough to remember, can recall what that looked like. There's a power hit in Lower Manhattan. It wasn't just that antiquated building. I think it was the whole neighborhood or something on a Saturday evening took a power hit, and our monitors were going out. A camera blew up in the back. And you talk about trying to pilot a wobbly plane through fog and lightning. That's what I felt like. You couldn't see anything. We didn't know what was on the air. And so I think it was maybe the first or second year I'd done it, and we didn't have it down to a science, and the whole crew was sort of inexperienced, and somehow we got through that.
Who won it?
That was when Rashaan Salam won it, 1994, and it really was. You felt like you'd survived something. And I went out and had a few pops. The producer of the show, Jay Rothman, was a Colorado graduate. I am too, and then Rashaan was. So it was a nice little Buffalo toast to surviving that first year.
I lived in the Downtown Athletic Club for 3 months when I first got to New York.
You did?
Yes.
You know how cozy the rooms were then.
Oh my gosh, it's convents have nicer rooms for the nuns.
There's very little that has in common with a convent, though. That building. I remember when the finalists used to stay in that building.
Yeah.
And there used to be the ritual. They'd bring him in, I don't know, a couple nights before, and some of the players would go out and try to, sample the New York nightlife, and maybe they'd bring a special friend back and try to sneak him past the security guard up the little twin bed in their room.
Yes, but there's this. They have a spa. Because I went there, and
That's a very fancy name.
I know. And I go down into this so-called spa at the Downtown Athletic Club, and it's all of these old guys sitting around naked. And I'm from a small town in Ohio, and I'm going, what have I got myself?
They're getting the spritz in there.
I don't know what they were getting, but I walked in and I went, I was in no man's land, and it was just so depressing.
You go into the steam room like with shorts and a T-shirt?
Yes. Yeah, I walk in, la-da-da-da-da, and you got these old guys around. They're just sitting around there naked, and I go, I thought they were Greek statues where they're lying down posing or something. It was not. That was my welcome to New York moment.
I can't believe you lived there for 3 months.
3 months. 3 months.
I spent about 3 hours. That was enough on a Saturday once a year.
The playoff selection committee. If you were going to give them a mulligan, what would that mulligan be this year?
Well, I mean, I'm not being political. They had a hard job. The TCU and Baylor have just as good a cases as Ohio State. And when nobody lost, it was going to be a problem. 6 teams wouldn't fit into 4. The mulligan would be never put TCU third the week before the final rankings because it was very confusing. It gave the impression that TCU wasn't even on the bubble. They were in pretty good position. You go out and win by 52. I can understand why they'd be upset. I mean, Baylor had a great case. Ohio State came from way back. I think they were 16th or 17th when the first rankings came out. Mm-hmm. So they made a hard charge, and obviously the beatdown of Wisconsin, which never showed up. The score was a little misleading. It made Ohio State look maybe a little bit better than they are. But that's the problem with putting out the weekly rankings is TCU jumping ahead of an undefeated Florida State team was kind of weird in the first place, and then it looked even weirder when the final rankings came out. I know they can justify it. The rankings are very defendable. The matchups that people are excited about, but they did what was most politically savvy, and you offend only one league. 2 teams you can point to and say, well, hey, I mean, there was a tie. They didn't have a championship game. It was easy to exclude the Big 12. It would have been much harder to exclude the Big 10 or Pac-12 or somebody.
Yeah, my problem was that you had the made-for-TV event on Tuesday night where you have the reveal there. And I thought that Jeff Long dug himself into a corner, it seemed like, with how he would explain week-to-week rankings. And then you got to TCU at number 3, and I thought, well, they must be all in on TCU because TCU's got an easy game, that final game. So at worst, they're going to be 4th. And I thought that was where they did a disservice to themselves in the perception and the reality. And then you bring in a heavy hitter like Ohio State. That's when people look and go, wait a minute, I got questions about this. And that's the last thing I wanted to happen when, that we got to this point, that we have a Final Four. And I was very happy to see it. I just didn't like that we're reading perception and reality into it.
100% agree. I mean, I think that in the poll era, I mean, I'm not saying that was better because they weren't very fluid. They were rigid. If you were up there and you didn't lose, you weren't going to drop. I like the fact that these people were a lot better informed than any pollster ever was. I promise you, I voted in the AP forever. I didn't know nearly as much about these teams as the people in that committee room. But nobody knows going to the last weekend, what's enough? What do I have to do to get in? TCU didn't know that, and TCU didn't get scheduled like a contender by the Big 12. Nobody expected them to win the conference, so they got Iowa State the last week. That's not what the Big 12 should be doing for its top teams, but nobody expected them maybe to be in that position.
The demise of Michigan, Chris.
Crazy.
How? Why?
Didn't get good enough players, for one thing. I don't think they've recruited as well as the top teams in the country. I think if you look along the lines, offensive and defensive lines in particular, they have not lived up to expectations. The revolving door, there's just been so little continuity at offense. I mean, I think college football is better when Michigan is good and Michigan is competing for dominance in the Big Ten. And I think, unless you're an Ohio State fan, I mean, you sort of want Michigan to get back there and be in that position and battle the Buckeyes for the Big Ten every year.
Nick Saban's place in college football history.
Very near the top.
Because we do
Mount
look at the
Rushmore,
NFL.
for sure.
But we look at the NFL. I don't know if we've looked at Nick Saban in that way, where we go, okay, is he up there with who? Go down the list of. You
look at the. I think at the end of the day, given the circumstances of modern football and how hard it is to dominate, when there was much more parity than there was. I mean, honestly, people might throw up in their mouth who don't like Saban or Alabama, but when he's done, whatever they do, maybe he gets another title this year, who knows, or adds to the resume. For me, he's up there. He's up there with Bryant and Rockne and Leahy and the guys who have achieved the highest levels in this sport.
He's Chris Fowler. He has no bias except for Colorado football. I did take you to task a little bit on the calling us idiots.
I didn't call you an idiot.
No, us in general.
No, I said, here's the deal.
Because I was one of those.
I'm not going to get into that again. That's a dead, old, tired thing. But I never used the word bias. I was talking about an agenda. I was arguing against an agenda, which is different. Bias just means you pay more attention to one than the other, which is true. We did. We've been biased against the top teams for a quarter century on the show, maybe to a fault. You can argue that philosophy. We are very tilted to the top of the polls. When that's split up between different conferences, the coverage is split up. When it's in one conference, as it was that snapshot week in the middle of October, you're damn right we're tilted to one conference. But it's not because of a business idea. It's because that's where the polls are. But I said there was uninformed idiot stuff. I didn't call a human being that.
I took it personally.
And so did a lot of people.
Well, you're tilted towards the polls. I get that.
Yeah.
I just said you're in business with the SEC as a company that you would want to. It's business sense.
In college football.
I know, but you have a network with them.
But that's a tiny piece of the business.
I know, but it's still.
I'm not the expert in the business, but I guarantee you that the playoff and the $7 billion investment in that is more important than a network that's around one conference. And the contracts we have with the ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, Pac-12, you don't do a deal with one and cover them at the exclusion of all your other business partners. You just don't do that.
Do you have a house in SEC country? True or false, Chris?
No, I do not.
You do not.
But I'm willing to take one. If someone wants to buy me one like they bought Saban a house, I could think of many nice places in the SEC region.
I can get you a house in one SEC city. Where do you want to live?
Ooh, that's a good question. I like Nashville. I get a big horse farm in Nashville. Vanderbilt's still in the SEC.
Yeah, they are. But Herb Street's already got Nashville.
He does. That's a pretty nice spot, though.
Where else can I put you?
Oh, now you're ruling out Nashville?
Well, no, Herb Street's got it. You can't go there.
Oh.
Corso's got Gainesville.
Yeah.
So you got to put
I'll tell you what. I'm not going to offend anybody. I could scratch a few out very quickly.
But you don't want to go to Starkville?
I will say that Athens, Georgia.
Okay. All right. Great music scene there. You can go see Mike Mills of REM.
Oxford, Mississippi, Mike Mills is a friend, as he is of you too. So Athens or Oxford?
I would go Oxford. Yeah, I would go Oxford.
Oxford, yeah.
Can't go wrong there. Nice scenery.
Yes.
Hey, hope family's great. Great to talk to you again. Just so you know that your boss, the ban is lifted at the mothership.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
Free
is.
At last. Free at last.
Hey, congrats on the season. Have fun this weekend at the Heisman.
We will, Dan. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, bye-bye.
That's Chris Fowler.